My name is Gawain Morrison. I am co-founder and co-director of Brink. And happy ma bon. We're almost at the autumn equinox. Perfect balance between day and night. And a couple of thousand years ago, there were systems thinkers, circular thinkers, and people that understood how to repair, reduce, reuse. And that was how they lived their lives. Astronomically, we had an awareness that it's about to get colder, it's going to get darker, our plants are not going to grow as well, better store them so we're going to be able to survive to do it again. Simple process, and somehow it got forgotten. If you roll forward, 1972, Donella Meadows, biochemist who was recruited by MIT, came and led a team to be able to build computer science models using mathematics, and presented a model called World 3 in 1972 that basically said if we didn't deal with the problems of environmental damage, pollution, resource usage, by the middle of the 21st century we were going to have environmental and economic collapse. This month, not to bring us into doom and gloom, I'll get us back out, don't worry. This month we had the Swedes step up and do their scientific announcement, their third one since 2009, saying that we've crossed quite substantially 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries and put an extreme stress on the other 3. Alarm bells going off all over the place and status quo still happening. We need systems change, we need culture change. And at the core of that is culture. Culture and how we treat each other, culture and how we treat our planet, culture and how we share, culture and what we do and output. And that's what we do at Brink. This is where we're going with Brink. We believe that cultural interventions are imperative for us to be able to provoke, to inspire, to teach, to learn, to be a platform for helping. And we come together as communities to make a difference. This is why things like the Fibreshed movement, the slow food movement, these things are gaining traction. They're important. They're important because of the core of what it is to be with each other living on this planet. If you don't live in balance, we're snookered. Simple. There is no other route. So to me, this is inspiring. I'm coming quite new into the Fibershed awareness. The fact that you can live like this, and it's pushing and leaning into our heritage, saying this is what we've had, look at what we did. And to be able to take those and bring them back into, get rid of your plastics, where are you at? Live with what you've got, natural-based fibres. Learn how to grow and sow and make, repair and reduce. This is essential for us. So this is what I'm interested in today, guys, and I hope you are as well. You wouldn't be in the room if you weren't. But what I'm particularly interested in understanding from the pair of you guys is a bit more around how do we embrace this as a movement? What challenges have you felt that you've had to deal with? How does anybody in this room be part of it and make a difference? How do they become part of this movement? And especially when we're moving from linear models and waste models, how do we get to a point of circularity? Where are the holes? Where are the problems in us getting to there as a society and as materials and outputs?
Hi, my name is Malú, Colorín, and I am a natural dyer. And I am also the co-founder of Fibreshed Ireland, which I will tell you a little bit more in a second. I guess first I want to introduce myself a little bit as to how the hell I got here, because I'm a graphic designer that's what I started as in university. So how did I end up involved with textiles, and how am I in the linen Biennale after all? So yeah, as I said, I'm a graphic designer, but at some point, well, I mean, I've always kind of had the question. I've always been quite concerned with the environment and stuff, but it was just something that was kind of like a hobby or something on the side. Eventually, I stumbled upon this amazing book that I really recommend to anyone who's into textiles, if you haven't stumbled upon it already, The Slow Stitch, which talks about stitching as meditation, just slowing down through making with our hands. The Slow Stitch by Claire Wellesley Smith. And in that book she mentioned natural dyeing, and that really caught my imagination, and I was like, what is this? I need to learn more about this. So I started reading, I started researching, I started doing workshops and things. I'm originally from Mexico, so in Mexico I did workshops. Then over here when I moved to Ireland, I've done some abroad as well. And just trying to soak all the information I could, which eventually led me to Fibershed. Because when you go down the rabbit hole, eventually you don't just start thinking about colors and how do I make those colors. You end up thinking about how is my fiber made? Where do textiles come from? Why is it we're wearing plastic most of the time? Why are we not wearing natural fibers? So all these questions start to pop up eventually. So that's what led me to the Fibershed movement. And I guess before I go on, because I'm a natural dyer, I've got some samples over here that you can take a look at over the break of some linen and wool, Irish wool from the Galway Wool Co-op, and as Irish linen as we have at the moment from Berwick McNutt. So it's finished here in Ireland. And I guess I'll get into the process of linen in a second. But okay, so what is Fibershed? And specifically, what is Fibershed Ireland doing? So we're a community-supported, not-for-profit social enterprise, and our whole thing is to bring back the networks that we used to have at some point and rebuild whatever we're missing so that we can have a regenerative Irish textile system based on local fibre, local dyes, and local labour. So our idea is to, I guess in easy terms, bring back the textile industry back to Ireland, to the island of Ireland as much as possible in a way that is actually kind to the environment, reciprocal to the environment, to the land we're in, and to the people who produce our clothes and our textiles and whatever we use fibre for. So we can use it for many things. So we are part of the global Fibershed movement. So it didn't just start here in Ireland. It wasn't just my idea that suddenly I woke up and thought about this. This started in California in around 2009 by another natural dyer, a woman called Rebecca Burgess, who wondered, I wonder if I can get all my clothes made within a 150-mile radius of where I am here in Northern California. If I could wear clothes made within that radius for a year, how would that look like? And so it was just a question, it was just an experiment. It turned into a project and she actually managed to do it. A whole bunch of people came together and helped her out. They would knit for her or source some fibre. She started working with local farmers, how would it look like to have a wardrobe made entirely within a 150-mile radius of where she was. And so that's how the movement started, and eventually it started replicating all over the world. And it's not just about 150-mile radius and making your own clothes, but it's about kind of asking these questions and trying to find the solutions of how can we be more resilient with our textiles? How can we engage with our landscape in a more reciprocal, engaged way? Since March 2022, we are here in Ireland a registered affiliate of the global movement, and each affiliate works independently. So even though we're all kind of part of the same, we share the values, we share the same ethos, we all, each affiliate is independent. So some are more focused on other things that are relevant to their own areas. Here in Ireland, we're specifically focusing on linen and wool, which are our native fibres, or the fibres that we've grown historically the most. There's also some alpaca. There's starting to be some hemp. So we're focusing on that. And I'll tell you more about it in a second. So as I said, the idea of Fibershed is not just about growing my own clothes, having clothes made within a 150-mile radius, but it's all about true circularity and what we call the soil-to-soil model. So if our clothes are grown from natural materials and dyed naturally using plants, insects, or minerals, how can we do it in a way that they can compost eventually back to the soil? So our clothes are grown, by farmers, by people growing fibers. They get processed, they get designed into garments or textile goods, whatever it is we're making. And eventually, we have these extra little circles on the side where we can upcycle our clothes, we can remake them, we can re-dye them. Textile to textile recycling, etc. But at the end of the day, at some point, our clothes are gonna, we won't be able to recycle them, upcycle them, or do anything else with them anymore. So can they go back to the soil? If they are made from natural fibers and dyed with natural dyes, they can. So that's the whole idea. How do we enable true circularity for our textiles? And I know this is quite an ambitious and quite an utopic ideal, but that's kind of what's keeping us going. That's where we're going. So obviously, it's not a reality yet. Even, I don't know, at the moment, my shoes have plastic in them, for example. So, it's quite hard, but it's a way to keep us going. Leather, by the way, can be another thing that we have in Ireland that we're not really using. So, something to think about. There's 65 of us in different bioregions, again, the whole idea is to produce clothes and other textiles that are rich with life and also rich with tradition. Each region has their own textile heritage, and somehow over the past few years we've kind of just all become globally homogenized, and we all kind of wear the same clothes, which, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but how can we tap into our heritage? How can we remember the cultural importance of certain garments? So, even the utilitarian aspect, in Ireland we wear certain things because they are in response to the landscape that maybe if we were somewhere else we wouldn't wear because it wouldn't make sense. So how can we kind of tap back into that? So I guess if you want to learn more about the global Fibershed movement, there's a really great book written by Rebecca Burgess. Feel free to take a photo of the slideshow. There's also the website, fibershed.org, and there's a really great podcast called Weaving Voices that's produced by the Fibershed folk. So that's kind of like an overview of the movement. In terms of what we are focusing on here in Ireland, so our vision is biodiverse ecosystems and thriving livelihoods woven by culturally vibrant Irish textiles. So that's where we're going. Again, as I said, it's very idealistic, but it's something to keep us going and something that we can keep striving towards. Active hope, as Kathy will mention in a bit. So our main thing is building networks, supporting networks to craft a regenerative Irish textile system. And how to do it in a way that is kind to the environment and to people. And we do this by sparking collaborations, we also support farmers in implementing beneficial fibre practices, and I'll tell you more in a second. And we are catalyzing communities to facilitate regional fibre processing facilities. I don't know if you're aware or not, maybe some of you are. In Ireland we don't really have we still have some mills, but in general, we don't really process our own fiber anymore. So even though we're growing our own wool, we have sheep everywhere. Even though there's people like Malú Linen growing flax, there's nowhere to actually get that processed yet. So how can we bring that back so that we don't have to be sending our fiber abroad just so we can buy it back in the form of finished textile? So I guess the four main things we do is we enable networking, so events, and just bringing people together. We have an interactive map on our website in which we're trying to get people to get to know each other. An incredible thing that I've noticed about Ireland is that even though we're such a small country, a small island, sometimes it's hard for us to even know even though the neighbor next door is probably a farmer and I'm a spinner, we could do something together. But that doesn't happen for some reason. So we kind of facilitate that. We're also enabling regenerative fibre and dye farming. Fibre processing, which as I said is a big one here in Ireland, and we don't have enough fibre processing facilities yet, and education, research and advocacy, so that we can enable these kind of systemic changes needed also from the top down. So we're working kind of both ways, at the grassroots with farmers, with makers, with crafters, with designers, but also trying to enact policy changes towards more circular textile systems. And we work throughout the whole value chain of textiles. So sometimes it's a bit hard for people to understand what is it exactly, who do you work with? Anyone that is related to textiles, that we're interested in linking up with you and supporting you. So fiber growers, processors, crafters, retailers, universities, educations, aligned partners such as the Linen Biennale, for example, consumers and supporters. So anyone, and again, who here is naked? So we all wear clothes, therefore this pertains us all, even if you don't consider yourself a fashionista or somebody who's into the latest trends or whatever, we're all wearing clothes and they're pretty much a necessity, just as we need to eat. So we should be taking our clothes as seriously as we take our food. So yeah, just I guess a little bit about the team. I'm one of the co-founders along with Kit, who's a felter and a spinner. Jessica Leonard is another one of our directors. She's an agroecology educator and nature-friendly farmer. We've got knitwear designer Leodin Aiken, Sandra Keane, who is a wool expert. She'll know everything about wool. Jennifer Leonhardt, who's another natural dyer, and Kira Doyle, who's a knit and crochet pattern designer. So it's a kind of nice mix of farmers, makers, designers. So some of the stuff we've done so far, as I said, our interactive map, it's up on our website. We're kind of updating it at the moment, so it'll be better in a couple of weeks. And again, it involves the whole island. So, you know, what are people doing in terms of crafting, designers, farmers, etc., just to start sparking those connections and maybe bring collaborations forth. We started with a Friday Fashion Shift, which is a social media campaign. So every Friday we invite people to show us what they're wearing. And it can be anything, as in like I'm wearing natural fibers, anything that reflects your personal fashion or textile ethos. So natural fibers, something upcycled, something mended, something handed down to you from, you know, your parents or your family or whatever, a friend. Something you got at a swap shop. So just to kind of get people thinking about it in a very light-hearted way on social media. Last year we did a symposium in Dublin in November for Design Week, and this year we're going to be doing it again, 17th of November, so mark your calendars. We'll have more information about that soon on our website. We started a membership program which helps fund our operations. As I said, we're a community-supported social enterprise, so our membership program really helps support that. It's a very small fee for membership, and this contributes to, you know, bringing people together. Our members get special benefits, special discounts in some of our events, and also it helps keep us going. We've got some joint funding applications for different projects. Unfortunately, those were not successful, but we keep trying. We're constantly sending out applications. These were two big ones: a prototype wool processing facility and a traveling exhibition in partnership with the Science Foundation, which we're still making happen next year. It's just probably won't be as big as we had originally set out to do, but an exhibition about the potential of Irish-grown fibers. This year we also, for Fashion Revolution, we did a campaign called Nothing New, in which we offered free online workshops for people to mend, upcycled, re-dye their own clothes instead of buying anything. So the idea was for the whole month of April you wouldn't buy any new clothes and you would instead focus on kind of revamping your own wardrobe. So we offered free workshops for that, and they're still available for our members on our website. Processing facilities. So we supported Mourne Textiles, which many of you might be familiar with, right here in the Mourne Mountains. We supported their crowdfunding campaign to restore a vintage linen spinning machinery, and it was successful. So hopefully in the very near future we will have fully Irish linen from being grown in, you know, Malú linen to being processed and spun by Mourne Textiles all the way to the finished textile, because we still have the weaving and the finishing here in Ireland. So that's really, really exciting. And we're also building a network of support for Éire's wool processing mill. Éire is a wool company in Wicklow, and they've got some mill machinery to be able to actually spin wool. So they're getting all their ducks in a row, they're getting all their feasibility studies done, and we're supporting them with that, and bringing people together as potential customers, so that they know that they have a market for their wool and they can access bigger pots of funding to make it happen. Last month we had a weekend of events in Valley the Hub in West Cork, and there were different things, talks, networking, presentations, talks about Irish grown wool, talks about linen. There was a market stall and a workshop. And Kathy might be able to tell us more about that. And we've got our Regenerative Growers Knowledge Transfer Group. So we started with 9 fibre and dye growers who came together, and we, over 6 sessions, kind of started co-developing a verification system for regenerative Irish textiles. So the idea is that our textiles are not only grown in Ireland, but grown in a way that is kind to the soil and that actually helps build healthy soil through different practices, such as water management, managing hedgerows, leaving some spaces wild for nature, etc. And this has turned into our community-supported reciprocal textiles yarn program. So two of these farmers that participated in our regenerative growers group are now getting their wool processed, and we're developing community-supported yarn. So the idea is it's like community-supported agriculture where you pay for your vegetables before you get them. The idea is that you pay up front for your yarn, and you'll get beautiful yarn made in a way that is potentially helping the environment, and this program is going to be evolving over time thanks to this kind of helps fund the reciprocal textiles program that we are running in conjunction with our farmers. And we've been involved with conversations with policymakers about the future of Irish textiles and kind of embedding circularity in a way that actually systemically makes sense, and we can talk about that a bit more when we have our conversation. So again, it's an approach top down and also bottom up. We're trying to come at it from both sides. So the future, we're going to be at the Earth Rising Festival at IMA from tomorrow, this weekend, demonstrating spinning, weaving and dyeing for people to kind of get involved and learn more about how our textiles are made and what the potential is for Irish grown fibres. We'll be at the Let's Knit Festival in October, which is in Doolin. We'll be, like I said, we're having our symposium again this November, the 17th of November in Dublin, and it's going to be, the topic is about folklore. How can folklore kind of inform the future of Irish textiles? We've got our reciprocal textiles program, and as I said, our travelling exhibition for the next 2 years, hopefully, about the potential of Irish textiles. So when we have our conversation later on, this is just an invitation to maybe start thinking about questions or things. What would you like from your Fibreshed? Because even people who are not necessarily our members, we consider part of our network. So we want to know how can we best serve people who wear clothes in Ireland. So everyone. Thank you.
Hello everyone. It's so great to be up here. We've travelled quite a distance this morning and a gorgeous conversation in the car about what today was about and about the future of sustainable textiles. So it's a real privilege to actually be up here. Malú was a graphic designer in her past. I was a PE teacher and a geography teacher also. So it's quite strange, and I also teach in UCC, but a lot of the work I do is very interactive and experiential. So it feels a little strange just standing still. So if you see me dancing across the floor, navigating the space, don't be alarmed. So thanks for coming, and it's great to see such an interest in the sustainable textiles area and in Fibershed, and what's interesting, so the focus of what I'm going to talk to you about for the next while is really focusing on community. Just to give you a little bit of background, I remember at the age of 15 buying the Green magazine. It was an international publication about the environment and being very interested in the environment, and harassing local farmers who would come down to the river behind our house and clean out their slurry tanks, and be very upset at an early age about the really monumental things that were happening. We swam at that river. That was my only focus at that time, as we swam there. I didn't think of the bigger picture. And at the age of 15, I was subscribing to the Green magazine, and I was doing my intercert at the time and my exams, and I became quite, very sad. I suffered from what we now know as eco-grief, and really had to put away my environmental concerns for quite a bit. I turned 50 this summer. I came back to it about 10 years ago. With the cognizance of really working with what Joanna Macy would say, active hope. So actually, practically being able to do things. And this is the bedrock, or this is the reason I started developing our Flax Linn project in the Centre of Excellence for Climate Action and Sustainability in West Cork. So we spoke about, Malú spoke about connections and systems thinking and circular thinking, and all of these organisations, from CCAS, which is a new Centre for Excellence for Climate Action and Sustainability. It's an old priest's residence with the most amazing gardens, an ancient forest, and it was recently taken over by Green Skibbereen, who are running sustainability programs, have a garden, and are very open to ideas, workshops. There's accommodation in the space. We work with Fibershed Ireland, Kilco Studios, as Malú already mentioned, IMA, West Cork Community Hospitals, through the lens of gathering social stories about people who were involved in the flax industry and the linen industry in West Cork in particular is our focus. We also work with Cathy Fitzgerald of Haumea Ecoversity. Cathy's based in Carlow, and she will be at IMA also this over the next 4 days. And Cathy has really powerful and transformative courses that she runs online. One is on eco-literacy and another one is on the Earth Charter, which is like there's 4 pillars in the Earth Charter. So it's looking at the principles for how we live in a sustainable way. Then through my work actually in UCC and also through the work in Flaxlane, we look at we're very cognizant of the Sustainable Development Goals, you know, and anchoring what we do in the Sustainable Development Goals. We also work with Ilan Clara, which is Cape Clear, the island off the coast of the southwest of Ireland, close to Mizen Head. And we also work with UCC, with the ERI, the Environmental Research Institute, and with the Crawford College of Art and Design. And when I say we work with all these people are they're organisations that we interact with in a very real way, in terms of, you know, being informed by research, by looking for research funding, by getting our hands down and dirty in CCAS, you know, planting the flax, working in the community garden. So there's a lot of different elements and different connections and different people involved. It's that whole systems thinking. It's, you know, different people involved in different ways of being within the community of Flaxlane. So I love the phrases that are associated with flax growing and with linen. And the reason I chose airing our dirty linen is because what I've noticed in the community groups that we're involved with, that, you know, it's just not about planting flax seeds. It's just not about harvesting. It's just not about, it's the holistic experience of engaging with people, airing your dirty linen, sharing your stories, you know, connecting with people, understanding, you know, being compassionate about what you're doing, and it's a real sharing space. And in that way of airing your dirty linen, and also in the skills that different people can bring to the actual Flaxlane project. So the project is really interesting because it emanated from a space during COVID where I found out we grew flax in West Cork, primarily, most recently during World War II, to supply, as a neutral country, to supply the war effort in Great Britain. So it was very interesting. Even that space is very interesting. But what I was astounded that the fact that we actually produce textiles in Ireland, because I really hadn't, you know, been in that space before. My area, I was doing a lot of eco art and working with different workshops on eco art and sustainability education, but the bigger picture of what we printed on or what we used, you know, it was something that I hadn't considered or hadn't realised. It was so local to us. So the project really, I have to say, there wasn't an absolute strategy with the project. It grew, and I think, again, as I said, I'm in that middle age group, and I felt that, you know, I was very confident in letting it and seeing how it went, where it went, how it grew, you know, and all those reciprocal relationships that would come in and out of the space of the project. And what has grown really has been that we've firstly we grew flax for our first time this year. We grew a small demo plot, 2 meters by 2 meters. Somebody came to West Cork looking for the big flax field and they found 2 by 2 meters. which we surrounded with cornflowers and dyer's marigold. And so visually it was just this absolute feast in every way, for bees, for our eyes, for touch, for all of those senses. And then the making, we started doing some flax felting, so using flax to actually felt together, which works very well because it's that bast fibre, you know, that really knits and holds. And in West Cork, I realised that social history, that the actual, like the people who had worked in the mills and grown the flax in the war times were actually now in their mid 80s, 90s. So I had a fabulous summer I spent most of my time with people in that age group, chatting to them, recording interviews, and hearing them, because as I mentioned to Malú actually in the car on the way up, that there's a couple of those people actually passed away that I've been talking to in the last year or so, and it's that remembering and it's that honouring of the skills that went before, you know, and bringing those into the future and really holding them and connecting with identity in place, and relearning the skills. And interestingly then, as part of an arts festival in Skibbereen, I was approached to share a singing workshop, and I tried to, I was trying to think of how would I embed it in where we were, and I started looking for flax songs or linen related songs, and the songs that came to me mostly were the working songs of the walking the tweed tradition. So we had a gorgeous singing workshop where we held it in the flax garden, and we brought people into the presence of singing, I suppose, and created our own songs, working songs, and also celebrated the arduous work that women did at that time also, because we tended to have a romantic notion of flax and linen, and it's all so beautiful and flowy. But, you know, when we look at the processes, through the processes that it takes to actually get it to the final product, you know. Back then, particularly with hand tools, it was phenomenally arduous. You know, and even the women, like we go back to walking the tweed, we sat and did a workshop, and for a week afterwards I was feeling it. You know, it's very physical. You know, and those women, the walking women, were working with urine, you know, working with the wool. So, you know, it was about celebrating that and sort of scaffolding the flax or weaving the flax into that space also. And that all happened at the CCAS. So I talked about airing the dirty linen, and I spoke briefly about active hope. And back to when I was 15 and I had to park all of that traumatic eco-grief. When I started studying on a course in the Crawford in Cork, a course called Creativity and Change, one of the first people we were introduced to was Joanna Macy. And it was almost like, it was transformative, it was like landing. You know, it was like an anchor, because when we can have active hope, when we can actually do something, we just don't have hope in our cerebral space. We have hope like that we can actually get down and dirty and actually do something. So that was very, very important. So it's about becoming active, becoming more active, you know, and thinking in that proactive method rather than wallowing or sitting in hopelessness or hoping. So in terms of the active hope, you know, it's looking at a clear view of reality, because really and truly, we a lot of the time we can think globally, and you know, the necessity is to act locally, and also it needs to be, you know, we need to engage in things that are tangible for us, or things that are accessible for us. And I think that for me was also quite transformative and quite a catalyst in having that local community together, because we all realised, you know, we can all bring something to the table here. Like there's one person, and she makes the most delicious cakes. We've all put on like a couple of pounds since we started, you know, and that's her contribution to the bigger picture. So we could all have something to contribute. So the Lynn community, I've just a couple of images here I love images of hands. I really love those, like that really tactile image So these are images of us getting down and dirty and planting the flax back in our 2 by 2 metre plot back in June of this year. And this is the harvesting of it, which only happened last Thursday. Yes, we had about 9 or 10 days or something. And I'm not sure how ready it was, but you know what? There's so many other things inculcated in it. You know, it was that gathering together again. It was like, you know, a local farming, a woman with a local farm was in the picture. You know, a local, a permaculturist. The girl in the middle in the red is she creates her own photographic solutions from plants. The girl beside her is a psychotherapist. She kept us all in tow. Myself, and then the girl on the end is from, she's from Clonakilty originally. She lives in Lancashire. Lancaster. Yeah, they're one of the same. Is Lancaster the place or the smaller place? No? She came over from Lang something. And Enda is involved with the Sewing Cafe Lancaster, that's it. She's involved with the Sewing Cafe. And they're, again, involved in very similar projects. So again, with the networking, we have organised an exchange with Enda's Sewing Cafe in Lancaster. And then the making, this is a recent workshop that we had at Kilcoe Studios as part of the Fibre of Our Being exhibition that Malú mentioned earlier. And again, the hands and the making and the doing and the tactile nature of it and the connection. And what was so beautiful about this was that, at one of these tables, I think it was actually, there was one table outside, the one in the bottom right of the woman in blue, the woman at that table in the blue started singing and everybody joined in. And as they were actually creating the fibre or the fabric, the textile, they were all singing together, like in a rhythm, which kept them all going. And people were making up verses to songs. And this was completely out of the blue. There hadn't been a focus on that. The focus was on to explore the flax, try and felt with it, incorporate some nice flowers, and interestingly then some of the marigold flowers give a gorgeous orange hue to the flax. So it was an amazingly immersive experience, but I thought the singing part, it was embodying sort of the head, hand and heart, you know, it was bringing it all together. So that was an amazing, really beautiful event, and I love these sort of teachable or these moments that happen and you let them happen. And that was one of those, the singing that happened in this workshop in Kilcoe. The social history of West Cork flax then, like I said, I've spoken to maybe, so many people over the age of 85 in the last 6 months or so. And, these are some of the, so this woman, Breed Harrington, it was her father. He worked in the mill in Adrina for several years, and he used the £10 prize for scutching to plaster the house. Like, I think they're just fabulous stories, absolutely fabulous. If we won €1,000 today, would we be so connected with how we would spend it? It's really beautiful. And then Michael Santry, this man was so funny. He was amazing, with an amazing memory. And he said the first time he saw his father without any clothes on, he couldn't even use the word naked, without his clothes on, was in the retting pond. So, he said towards the end of the retting process, the water was obviously becoming more and more pungent. And that they had one suit of clothes maybe for working, literally a suit as well. And you couldn't get into a retting pond in that because you had to go out to work again the following day, And there was another story that I haven't included here, which I shared with Malú this morning, which was from a man called Johnny Crowley. He had a garage in West Cork, and Johnny, when he was maybe 17 or 18, used to work in the retting ponds. And he said something about there being there was quite a lot of money, or it was a good part of the process to be involved in because it was so awful, it was paid, it was well paid. So Johnny, anyhow, at weekends would go, at evenings would go to the retting ponds and stamp on the flax, and then on a Saturday night there was always a dance in the Lilac Ballroom in Enniskeane. So they'd scrub themselves raw with carbolic soap because of the smell of the retting ponds, and they'd turn up at Enniskeane shiny and bright. But as the temperature in the hall would rise, first of all you get the sense of the carbolic soap, and following that the retting pond smell would come through. And as I mentioned to Malú, he was a bachelor, and I'm not sure why, but he was a bachelor. So, and just one other person then that I have here is Sean McCarthy. He was from Drina, again in West Cork, and what he shared with me was a map of, the area around Drina Co-op and the different acreage for the different fields that grew flax at the time. And then this blue line here was a stream they created. And as a lot of you may know, the retting pond water accidentally happened to flow out at night time into the streams and was, very toxic. So, so that just shows you, that small, simple map of a very small area in Drina around the co-op where the flax was grown. The singing. So this was the workshop we had, the working songs workshop. We created this gorgeous loom between two apple trees and hung, flax related terminology from the branches, and each different groups of people created their own songs or stories, and then we weaved the narrative, we weaved them through the loom. And then we sang this chorus that I'm going to play for you in a moment, Hey Molanan, and then people sang their verse, and shared the reason why they wrote the words that they wrote, and also shared the names of people who had passed on, who had been involved in the flax industry in West Cork also. In the war times, most of the flax was a lot of flax was grown in West Cork, and it primarily came to Northern Ireland, because there was a linen hall in Clonakilty. It was called the Linen Hall, but in fact it moved on as the raw product of flax to be spun and to be woven in Northern Ireland. So this is the women, the weaving, the walking, the working songs of the women in a workshop. And I'm just going to play something for you now. And I've given each person a little piece of flax tow, which incidentally came from Malú Linen just up the road in Tyrone. And if you have that piece of flax tow, I'd really like you to just close your eyes and just engage with it in a really touch, in a smell, in a rubbing it on your arm. Just engage with it, because that piece you have in your hand, that has had to go through a lot of processes to get to where we are now with it. And flax tow being the sort of the secondary product of the flax fibre. So I'm just going to play that song, Hey Molanan, just a short piece, and if you want to just engage with that piece of flax tow in your hands. I love the rhythmic nature of that. And if you can imagine, like with this walking tradition, women primarily taking down the door, putting it on some sort of plinth, and then working the fibre, and at that speed, it's wow. Yeah, who needs a gym? So yeah, that's what I've shared with you in terms of the bigger picture of this project we're involved in, which is growing arms and legs and going in really lovely directions. And we're delighted, of course, to be affiliated with Fibershed Ireland, because again, as a network and a connection, this has just spread the word on what we're doing, and we're delighted if anybody is in West Cork. We'd be delighted to show you the project where we're growing the flax and this place around the Centre of Excellence for Climate Action and Sustainability in Lep, just near Skibbereen. And thank you also to Linen Biennale and particularly to Maeve for all her amazing organisation, because she really had everything set up beautifully for us today. So thanks so much. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shannon Welsh. I live in Portland, Oregon, USA. I grew up here in Oregon in the upper to mid Willamette Valley, which is kind of the heart of Oregon's agricultural area. My family heritage is in the farmlands of North Dakota, and many of them immigrated from Ireland through Canada down into the US, so I have a fond love for Ireland. I'm wearing a Kindred of Ireland linen shirt, which I absolutely adore. My background, it was in education for quite a while, and then I've been knitting and making clothes most of my life, and most of my adult life, and enjoy making garments. Through that work, I decided to go back to school and in my adult years and pursue an apparel design degree, which led me into corporate design, independent design, and multiple facets of the manufacturing world for clothing. Around the time I graduated from that degree here in Portland, I was connected with Rebecca Burgess, who had founded Fibershed. And I was really excited about the work she was doing and her kind of vision for how we could start to create more circular local economies around textile and clothing production. My work within clothing was often a bit frustrating because I felt that the materials we were using and kind of the processes we had fallen into in this global production system was really taking us away from understanding what our clothes are made of, who makes them, where they're made. And as I dug more into that, I really embraced the Fibershed movement and vision and their mission. I started to sidestep out of corporate design and became one of the first Fibershed affiliates here in Oregon. In the Pacific Northwest, our region is the Pacific Northwest, which kind of goes from the tip of Northern California up through Washington, which is the state above us. I took on a 300-mile radius of Portland, Oregon to kind of start delving into what do we grow here? What do we produce here? Who's making what? Starting to map out a bit of what was happening. And in that process, I also dug into the history of our region, what kinds of things we were growing historically, and what were we growing or not growing now. And I discovered that we had been world leaders here in Oregon in flax for linen production. And having grown up here, I had no idea that we had a history of that. And I found that very fascinating. I spent quite a few years interviewing anyone I could about this process, about what we had here. We had 14 processing mills, over 18,000 acres growing of fiber flax. And then right around World War II, when World War II ended, we also discovered nylon, and washing machines came in a little bit later, and that really took the whole industry down here. We have no processing now for first stage processing for fiber flax anywhere in North America that isn't at more of a trial scale. We don't have the processes for harvesting equipment really set up. We have maybe 1 or 2 sets of harvesting equipment in the US. So it was something that had really disappeared here. And I found it not only fascinating, but linen was always one of my favorite fabrics in design. And also having a heritage that grew flax. Historically, it just felt like it was in my blood to really delve into linen. So I met through my work with Fibershed. I got a call from Angela Wardiskal, who was growing flax here in Oregon, and she invited me out to her farm. We hit it off immediately. So we partnered up and started Fibreevolution around 2017, which had the focus on rebuilding the infrastructure needed and kind of seed production, the whole gamut, really delving into flax for linen production here in our region. But then that really morphed a lot more broad throughout North America as our network built, as we started really meeting with people and touring mills and fields, and we got some research grants. So we really have been focused on flax for linen for quite a few years. And then through that work, we started to build such a big network, and we felt that there was a real need to bring everyone together around this fiber here in North America. There's lots of regions that are trying to bring this fiber back. We worked with the Fibreshed Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative. I was on the manufacturing committee, and we really felt that creating a trade organization, we could share education and resources, and instead of working in our silos alone, we could come together and really crack this nut here in North America. A group of us founded the North American Linen Association. It's a 501c6 trade association here based in Oregon. And we have on our board folks who live in Nova Scotia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Saskatchewan, Oregon, Washington. So we have a pretty broad group of people that have been working very much like Angela and I have here to build the networks needed. It's been an exciting time in our area for flax for linen. I started out within Fibershed really embracing the whole system, but quickly learned that you really need to pick a focus and have other folks picking other focuses. You can't do it all. And so my work has very much become rooted in revitalization of flax for linen production. Within the Fibershed network, we're really embracing the soil to soil system. And so I entered this as a designer and maker. Where I started was I have the fortune of my partner being a videographer and video and media producer. And so he brought his camera and I went out and just started interviewing anybody that was willing to talk to me about what they were doing in our region. And we produced producer story videos, which we released to the public. And those were really effective, I think, in educating people about the soil to soil system. But also, most people aren't aware that we don't have infrastructure for these fibers here. They're not aware that we're not growing these things right now at scale. They're mostly trials. People aren't connected as much to what their clothes are made of, where they come from, as they are with their food. But there was a lot of interest. Farms that are producing food produce fiber. It's very common to have sheep on your land, or goats, or alpaca here in Oregon. We are a huge wool producer. We have a history of being world leaders in that as well. We grow lots of dye materials here, and we grow hemp. There's a lot of hemp. We're starting to transition more at really looking at fiber, which is exciting. We can't grow cotton in our region, so that's something our Fibreshed hasn't really spent much time on. However, Northern California Fibreshed, which is right below us, is working diligently on cotton. One word of advice, or one challenge, I think, within building a network or a Fibreshed network is, and I alluded to it before, is that you really can't do it all. And I think that tapping into what work has already been done in your region. Here we had lots of groups that had been working on mapping wool production and breeds. And so it felt like us also taking on those tasks is redundant. So rather we would work with those groups and start to work together to see what do we have here? Where are the holes for farmers and producers? And there's many, there's many holes. We globalized our textile system so much that we offshored a majority of our textile infrastructure here in the United States. And so now, in thinking of rebuilding that, trying to be more mindful to build it on community and local need scale. Every region's different. Some regions have more capacity than others. Some don't have as much farmland. So the scale has been an area we spend a lot of time within Fibershed, I think, thinking about and trying to see how can we build some resiliency in this system without losing some of the local economy that is really needed. We need more jobs in rural areas, and I think that bringing some of these systems back is wonderful for the economy in so many ways, but it does bring jobs, it brings skilled labor, and it allows people. I would come from the design world. Everyone wants to be more mindful where they're sourcing, but the options just aren't there. Somebody might want to start sourcing like closer to home, but there is no way to do that. We don't have a scouring facility for large amounts of wool in our area. We don't have a way to scutch flax fiber here. We're doing it by hand. So things like that are very limiting, and I think the scale is an area of great challenge for Fibershed, of really figuring out what is the appropriate scale. And then once you figure that out, how do you get the machinery for that scale? That's been another area where we spend a lot of time thinking about and also assessing how could we create these smaller scales if the machinery is at a larger scale and things like that. So I think those are some of the challenges within building a Fibershed network. The positives is the community. I've been amazed at how much the community supports and wants to help however they can to repair some of these soil-to-soil systems, revitalize our textile system, support farmers more education around it. So I think pulling in your community is the most important part of making this very successful network. It's also very rewarding. And I know, having done this for over 10 years, I have such a large network of people of like minds, and it's really wonderful. It really helps make the work more rewarding, and it also moves us all forward when we're working together to try to, with a common goal. Advice for growing more circular and sustainable systems of production. I go back to community. See what's in your region, who's doing what's working, what's not working, where are the holes, where are the gaps. And then, starting to build some kind of, whether it's working groups or whatever you can get together to have a more targeted approach of what you can take on. In our region, there's a ton of holes, and there's no way I can take on all that. But I have been able to help other groups identify what they might want to focus on through my work or my research. And kind of as things come in to my Fibershed, some opportunities, it may not be a good opportunity for me, but I pass it on to the Wool Growers Association because I know that they're working on mapping this or something like that. But I think using your resources wisely and your time, much of the Fibershed work, especially in my region, has been mostly volunteer. That's the reality. I think funding and fundraising is probably the largest challenge we face because there's so much infrastructure that needs to be built or revitalized, which takes a lot of capital. So we've also spent a lot of time writing grants, connecting with local economic development teams, the state, the counties. NALA, North American Land Association, last year received a county grant. So I think tapping into ways to fund some of this has been a real challenge, but we've actually had some successes. We were able to get grants from some brands. So I think really thinking wisely about not burning out as a volunteer or not burning out your volunteers. So funding has been probably, I spend more time on that than I ever thought I would. So I think that's something to also be mindful of. And I think for creating more circular systems of production, we have to decentralize how we're making our textiles and clothing. Right now, the systems we have don't create circularity. And I think that's been the big mission of the soil to soil system, is that circular connection between the designers and makers, and then the garments and the composting, the carbon sink that can come through growing some of these fibers from animals grazing, from recyclable materials. All those things play into this system. So I think that it's important to not bite off more than you can chew, but it is, there's multiple things you're trying to tap into at once, and that can be exciting. It can also be kind of overwhelming. So for me, I really picked, I'm going to hone in on flax for linen for multiple reasons, and that I think most of the fiber sheds have a bit of a focus, and a lot of it's regionally dependent on what they're producing, what they're growing, and what their region needs. But I think the best part of that is if all the regions are doing that together, we're starting to create these circular systems of production at a global scale. So I think that's the power in this and the opportunity for sure. I will be coming over in October as well as a few of my colleagues, and we are going to be traveling through Northern Ireland from about the 15th of October through the 22nd. We would love to organize some time to meet up with those who are interested in connecting while we're there. We were kind of looking around the 19th. That seems to be a time where we have some open windows, but I can reach out to the organizers of this and give my contact information, and then feel free to reach out. We'd love to meet as many people as we can with these shared passions. So thank you so much. I'm really honored to have been invited to speak today. I'm very excited about all the work that's happening in Ireland. And I just think it's wonderful to see all these networks coming together to really move in a better direction for all of us. So thank you very much. It was my pleasure to share my story with you today.
Thanks a lot for your talks, they were so inspiring, and I have a question for all of you, particularly for Tamu. In the previous presentation here, some successes and also some challenges explored and talked about, and especially trying to find partners for the different stages of the recycling of the linen cycle. I would like to know what are the successes and what are the challenges here in Ireland. Is it possible, to what extent?
Yeah, okay. Successes. We have been very happily overwhelmed by the amount of people that have really come together to join in and be a part of the movement in any shape or form. Like, we are very new. Shannon mentioned she's been doing it for 10 years. We only started last year, and we are amazed at the response people have had to and being invited to events such as these. So that's been really amazing, because honestly I don't think we couldn't have done what we've achieved in over a year without people just coming on board and being, how can I get involved? Do you want to come over to this event? Can we do this thing? The Kilcoe Studios thing happened because we were invited to do it. It wasn't necessarily our idea. So just that response has been amazing. Challenges, Sharon said it, funding. We are also mostly volunteer run. Any money we get in, it mostly goes towards the running of projects, paying for stuff that needs to happen, keeping up our website, stuff like that. So yeah, funding is a big one. And then when we come to stuff like funding infrastructure, again, that's a challenge. And I guess another one, and we can get into it if we want, just the changing mindset of not the people who are here and not the people who approach us, but when we are invited to speak at policy level, we've been invited to speak at events related to circularity and textiles, just trying to fix the problem of producing in a centralized linear way by trying to maybe just curb the line, but not really thinking about circularity, full circularity, and just kind of changing that mindset. It can be quite challenging and frustrating. I get really frustrated when people were like, yes, circularity is a profitable opportunity. Okay, yes, we all need to make money, but what about just financially sustainable opportunity with all these other benefits that we are not looking at? These other values, these other benefits also need to be part of the equation. It's not just about making money, because that's really what's got us into this mess, just the idea of infinite growth in a planet that cannot sustain that. So I guess changing those mindsets has been a big challenge, just kind of systems thinking at a broader scale, not just textiles, but just within the whole system.
Can I ask a question on the process? So there's something I'm quite new to learning about hemp linen, the processes of going from flax through. But it seems like in the actual processing of it, if you leave it to fallow, then it could become very toxic when the fibre and runoff's happening. And so there was a lot of benefits to moving it to factories to process it quickly or to chemically quicken the speed, and then the chemicals were the problem, not the actual fibres themselves. But if you leave it in the field, then it has its toxicity. And you had said about the map that showed the runoff and talking about how it polluted into the ponds. Is there a problem in the actual soil to soil? And each of those steps, when I was looking at it on here, each of those will have resources to have to go into it, water that would be required to go into it, the human effort in doing it. Yeah. How do we deal with the individual issues of all of those and then linking it together? Because you can see it very easily, it all makes sense. But are there ways to deal with either the pollution side of things in the processes or not?
Well, interestingly, Malin Linen, what they tend to do is, hello, Malin Linen. You can answer. I hope I have the right answer to this. Yeah, I'd love you to share. What I was going to talk about is your retting water from the vats. What happens that in your situation?
Can I just ask if everyone can hear? Okay? Yeah. Is it okay? Yeah, we were just having a discussion on whether we should change the microphone setup. But I think those slightly closer to the front, because they're very lovely and don't bite. What did you have? I guess I'll give you the burning one. Go ahead.
It's exactly the right question to ask about the retting process, because it was one of the things that caused a lot of damage in the past. There are three forms of retting. There's dew retting, where you lay it out in the field and let nature do its work. There's tank retting, where you put it in a tank with harvested rainwater, which is what we do. And then there's chemical retting, which is basically where G-retting has no real effects on the waterways because anything coming off the plant just goes into the soil straight away. So I don't think there's any real issue with G-retting. Tank retting, which is what we do, and what they used to do, they used to ret it in the Flax Dam. The issue with that, if we just let all that water run into the river, that would be a disaster. It's like putting slurry into the river, the same sort of thing. But what we do is draw it out with a slurry tanker and spread it on the fields. And it's just like fertilizer, it's treated the same way as you would any kind of waste like that. Like, sorry, you just put it out on the fields. It's full of NP and K and all the good stuff that you need for your soil biology. And it's actually supposed to, somebody told me recently, it's quite good for getting fungal activity going in your soil again. So because of the way farms are now, where we have things like tanks and slurry tankers and so on available to us, we're able to deal with it at a farm scale. But if you industrialise it, it becomes a much bigger problem when you take it off the farm. So, I think Malú is 100% right. We need to think about scale, and Shannon said it, that we need to think about scale because there's a lot of stuff you can handle at a farm level that makes it really nicely sustainable, but once you scale above that, things get more challenging. Does that help?
It does, and it leads very nicely into the next question, which is the scale, because there seems to be, there's two very obvious benefits in this that have been beautifully highlighted. One is the community, and regardless of if you ever actually got it to scale, if you ever got it to do anything, the bringing together, the coming together, the sharing of the experiences, the singing the songs, the doing the making, getting the Popeye arm muscles, whatever they happen to be, those are all incredibly powerful and important parts. But if there's a genuine need and wish for the industry, the global industry, to move from being plastic-centric nylon and destroying us, then there has to be the jump to scale. So how can we go to that? How do we get to scale? I mean, I'm genuinely confused as how to do it, because surely then, if it was blatantly obvious, why is Nike and Adidas and everybody else not just going, well, let's just buy, we've got the money, we can buy the machines, let's just do it. I struggled. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that we kind of deal with on a regular basis. My approach to it, and I guess what we're building on at Fibershed Ireland, is thinking about economies of replicability rather than economies of scale. So, I mean, Helen was mentioning the retting. It can happen within her farm, but if suddenly Nike said, we're all going to grow linen and we're going to have this big facility or whatever, then the water would be a problem. Whereas if you have it in small or medium scale farms dotted all around, then the land can take that runoff. So to me, that's an approach that makes sense. We have in County Clare, there's Apple Oak Fibre Works. She's a natural dyer, and it's a mid-scale or small to medium-scale natural dye house, and it's limited by the amount of water, of wastewater that her land can take. So she can't grow anymore, and she's said it like, business people always come and like, how will you scale this? And like, no, it's not going to scale. This is as big as it can get because this is how big, how much the land can take. So what I would, the idea would be for another dye house to come up somewhere else where the land can take as much as it can take. And so if we can replicate systems instead of just thinking about one central huge way of doing it, I think that's how I would approach it. I don't know if it's the absolute correct best answer, but I think, replicating smaller things that can adapt to the landscape and to the needs of the, which is why it's so, which is why the Fibershed thing is a global movement, but we're all locally focused on whatever is relevant to each region, I guess. That's the answer. Or part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jennifer, her in Apple Oak Fibre also, she has a circular system in that she harvests her rainwater, uses that for her natural dyes, and then puts it through a reed system, and reuses the water. So, she has that micro system going on. And I don't think each area, it's not that each area needs to be growing flax or having a dye house, but I think it's that I suppose the reason Rebecca Burgess started the Fibershed movement, initially she looked at, in a year, could she source all of her clothing within a smaller area? So in every way like that, you're reducing your footprint, your carbon footprint, in terms of all of the inputs for what we're all wearing, for example. And I think that's what Fibershed are looking at. To me, Fibershed aren't addressing the big, the huge scale industry, bringing things to that level, because we lose so much. We lose the people. We become more mechanized. We become more automated. So that we lose everything, the essence and the vision and the values of what Fibershed is proffering.
Yeah, and the idea that we don't necessarily need new clothes all the time. We obviously, we need to wear clothes, but do we need to buy something new all the time? Like, maybe we are producing too many clothes, so can we produce less but in a better way? That makes sense. Yeah, I guess that's
Are there any other questions I have? Oh.
Here, I know, I'll be my own. Ask my own question, so to interview myself. I just kind of wanted to clap with what you said there in response to that last question, because I think the question is, that thing of like, we can't scale it up. It's like, well, that's been the problem. Like, historically, that kind of mindset of how do we apply this like on a bigger scale has been the problem, like since the Industrial Revolution. Obviously, with the kind of Ulster context of what we've been doing in the Linen Biennale, is we're looking back at that time where Belfast was, Linenopolis, and Northern Ireland was so entrenched in the production of linen, but that came, as we've described, with so many negative implications on the land and the people, and it got to that point, like a lot of industry, so big, and then when it collapsed, the fallout was massive from that as well, and that so many people were looking at jobs. Like, there's so many like mills and things like that left in our landscape, that are just relics to that time, but they're not, we need to think of new ways of using them. So I guess that kind of question of scale, and I can't remember what my question was and all of that, but it's just so damn exciting. No, I think what my initial question was about what, Kathy, your project that you're doing in West Cork, and I just wanted to say like how beautiful that kind of, because we're really interested in that too. You're talking about this sort of social history and the stories that people have. Like, that is probably one of the most exciting and engaging parts of the Linen Biennale as well. That we are trying to get those stories, and certainly like Mario Moore Textiles and that campaign, that trying to get the last people who have those skills and pass them on so that they can maybe be replicated at more sustainable levels of production is like such a big part of what we do. And I don't know. I just wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit more about that, I guess, in my question about that community involvement and how, like, from my point of view as the program manager, trying to build networks can be hard, It's like you never want to say no to people, and you really want to bring people in, but sometimes you're not quite sure what you're offering, or like where it's going to go. It's a very open-ended kind of thing. I love the thing about community. Can't remember the question, but it was just if you wanted to talk a bit more about that, and someone else might have a question on the back of my little spiel.
Thanks, Maeve. It's very interesting because there's a balance, isn't there, in how much openness you bring and how whether you strategize or not, or set out for it to be something. It's like Shannon? No.
Yeah.
Shannon mentioned how, she was there to tackle the soil to soil, and then she realised she could only focus on growing flax and processing it. And the beauty of this community project is that we're, like I said, celebrating the skills that everyone is bringing. We haven't sat down yet and embedded like what are our values. We're pretty sure in our values, but what is our vision or our mission? And it's in a way it's pretty organic. We will come to that, but like it's even the woman making the cakes and bringing them. You know, and I always approach things with this head, hand and heart focus, that, you know, we're not just our thinking heads, you know, we're our doing, and we're our feeling, our compassion in what we're doing. So it's very much, in being a community project, the focal point is flax. It's a fabulous anchor that can be picked up and moved in different areas and approach various different systems in very different ways. And it's about the people at the end of the day, because, like I mentioned at the beginning, the active hope element, it's about actually you know, sharing that as a way of being, you know, as an ontology. Because so there's lots of different parameters to it, and as you can hear, as I'm talking, I'm processing, and that's what I love, and that's what's fabulous about these networks. And what's interesting is, and something again I hadn't planned for, but there's 2 women coming in and out of the group who are farmers. So, you know, they're sharing what they're experiencing and learning about back on their farms. You know, so it's that, you know, we're all here because we're interested in flax and linen, and we can't force that on other people, as we know well. But at the same time, it's just like you mentioned earlier, it's just those, we were chatting down below here, it was those nuances, or that osmosis is the word you used, that happens as a consequence of these networks. And I personally love I love connecting people, because I think we've so much to offer, and we're not aware a lot of the time of the fact that we can bake the cake, and that can be part of flax lin. Or flax lin is Eli Fada Ed is the Irish for linen, and Maeve, our amazingly creative person, said, "Oh, I thought it was ling, as in us." So we might be shaping that name slightly differently. Flax lin, or extending it by another N perhaps. Yeah, because it is, you know, the network, it's the connection, it's a community.
Thanks, Kathy. Clearly I was processing while talking to you, and continue to do so. Another question.
I have 2 questions, and partly to be looking about everybody. One was, you mentioned policy and the challenge around funding and engaging with people at the policy level, the policy government. Are you finding any open doors there? Are you really interested, north or south or across the island, or elsewhere? And the other question was around, do you obviously this is so much about flax and development of that kind of holistic supply chain and new flax and new linen. Do you see anyone, brands or other, doing really interesting things with vintage, and just interested as your work is taking you different areas and thinking of kind of, you know, vintage linen, old linen, and reusing what we have on the island in other ways, as well as the development of new linen?
Yeah, so in terms of policy, we have been invited to speak at, I guess especially in the south, in the Republic, just because that's where the team is. To like be part of conversations that will eventually inform policy. So we've been invited to those kinds of things. There was actually one in Belfast as well. It was organised by Circularia, which works all over the island. But in terms of funding, like bigger pots of funding, the feedback we've got so far is that, but where's the recycling? So like, how can it be circular if there's no recycling? Which is like, well, we're not really focusing on the recycling because that's another beast entirely. Like that is certainly part of the circularity conversation, but we're not focusing on that because again, you have to focus on one thing. I guess, but at university level, we've been working with Ulster University, who recently did get a big pot of funding for a project they're doing. We're supporting them in that. At university level, there has been more, success with funding. And then the other question, people doing work with vintage. Yes, I don't know about here in the north, but I'm sure there are. I know there's Leisha Kari in Nina in Tipperary who does stuff with vintage fabric in general, not just linen. All her stuff is made with pre-loved fabric. There's, I think Owen Burke also works with vintage linen. Alice Halliday in West Cork. So yeah, there's a few people, and certainly some of them are members of Fibershed. So yeah, that's something that we're also, I guess, interested in.
If I can just add on to that, on who's doing so interesting, Marion Ancaro just runs Titanic Denim, brilliant,
Yes.
really leading the way on where to go with this, on how to reuse. With the project we're doing, we're trying to take over the city centre derelict space. It's Belfast Stories, and it's earmarked for a £100 million heritage centre to go onto it, to start in 2025, 26 potentially. But as a meanwhile site, and down in that part of Belfast, it's adding to the dereliction of absentee landlordism, empty buildings and car parks that aren't used. So council came forward to say, listen, does anybody interested in taking it? We put the hands up and says, yeah, we'll take it as anchor tenants to be a green and grow space, a sort of cultural space, and try and start the conversation. How do we bridge? Like, we're looking up on the hills, and yet most people all these young people don't have a clue where their food's coming from. You know, we have lost the connection. We can see the connection with the rural and the urban, and we've lost it. So we're trying to work out that was a question I was going to ask you, how do we start to bridge this back in its most simplest form? But to the funding point of view, no one's sitting and still aren't. It is demolishing us, where the implications of this are going to be sitting with us for another generation. The fact that we're still sitting here and nothing's happening, decision making in terms of money, where it goes, how it can go, is just disappearing year on year on year, with pots just being pulled back. So there's a lot of folks that are just throwing their shoulder to the wheel at a community level. At a corporate level, there's people in businesses here that are desperate to make a difference. There's good humans about the place that want to do stuff, and they will put money behind things, but they need to have some security that it's going to have some impact. That's where the environmental, sustainable, good money, the marketing money that sits there, the R&D into products, they can spend it. They want to do something meaningful. So talk to them. If you have ideas, go find them. They're up for it. You had a question?
My name's Christine, and I did a company in Belfast called Colorín. I was actually down in West Cork in the summertime near Garnish Island, which was absolutely stunning and so inspiring. And whenever I was 15, my project was a natural dyeing, because my granny had a wee blackberry tree, and I was picking blackberries and got a stain on my top. But I teach sewing classes in Belfast, and I've kind of been researching moving my company into the south of Ireland as well, because I've kind of taught so many people in the north, and they've gone on to set up businesses too. We've started now to repair sewing machines as well. So just yesterday we repaired a man's sewing machine for his father, who was 86, and it hadn't been working for 4 years. And the gentleman came up and was showing again, can you show me how to do that blind stitch again, because I'm just wanting to hem the trousers. And one of the lovely things that I love about all of my students is their stories. And it's like I have students from age 14 to age 86, and I've taught in the community Shannon Road and Falls Road and everything as well, so I love making connections. But whenever you can be talking on one story, and the 6 people in the class will all connect, and they'll say, my grandmother did that, and sometimes you're ending up talking with no sewing's done at all, but it is that lovely process of mending. And maybe somebody has some issue going on in their life as well, and you're also mending their heart. And that's what I've also listened to, just with your last point. It's grand to volunteer, and I volunteered, and the community's fantastic, and it's lovely to get all our hands working together. But there does have to be massive investment and appreciation of the heritage for the past, but also for the future and the potential. I mean, Belfast Linen was worldwide known. It was the best quality linen in the whole world. Again, with West Cork linen too. And it needs to be shouted from the rooftops. And even to see that lady in America wearing Kendra Harlan's top, and the work that Amy's doing as well is fantastic. So, I love celebrating the work that we have, Belfast and beyond too. So it's just like, with having the students, I have that connection of people who can sew, who can make garments.
garments, and whenever I'm teaching, I also kind of say, well, if you make it this way, then whenever your child gets older, you can lengthen the hem, you can take out that side seam, so you don't have to remake the garment constantly. So just with having a wee bit of manufacturing experience as well. So I'm very open to getting involved and helping out if I can in any way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what's your company again?
It's called Colour and Cloth.
Colour and Cloth.
Yeah, I'll put all the cards in.
Great. Well
Please.
done. Thank you.
It's great when those kind of connections come and
Yeah.
things like this, and like 100% agree with what you're saying. Like there's such fantastic people, trying to do this work, and I guess not so like, oh, the Linen Biennale, but we all up here are at the Linen Biennale events. But I think that's what I find that all about it all the time, but like partnerships and profiling and trying to connect all of those, like, yes, it's a heritage project, but what's really invested in what's here now and also where it's going to the future. That's one for me anyway, that's the more exciting part. We can learn from all of those things, and we learn from our mistakes as well as the things that worked well, and isn't it absolutely wonderful when those kind of connections are made when somebody gets involved. That's like, if one of those happens from this event, that's like a writing success in my book. So
can I just say something? Like, this is connection in action now, and I see a flax woven pot on the table, and I'm sure that came from Anne Harrington-Rees in West Cork, and she sourced her flax from Malú linen earlier in the summer. So that's that's it in action, and it was Anne actually was one of the most inspiring people when I started looking at flax first. She's a permaculturalist and an artist, and she was the person who inspired my interest as well. And she was at Fibre of Our Being displaying her work. So it's gorgeous. The connections are just, they're fabulous.